Craig Brain is not your brain or my brain. Love it or hate it or something in between. Welcome to the squishy, alien middle inside of this dude's skull. Take a peek. Take a peek.
Hey, it's Craig Gross. You're watching, listening, reading Craig Brain. Episode 17, which is actually about my son's 16th birthday. And this is another letter that I wrote to him, not you, but why are you sharing it? Man, for so many reasons. And like I've talked to my family about these things, and I said, hey, all this stuff's deeply personal. This is stuff that I've been learning and growing and just probably operating more just out of my head and more out of my heart, even though this is called Craig Brain. If anything I've learned this past 2 years is my brain doesn't stop at times, and sometimes I make decisions completely just out of my headspace, but trying to be more in tune with my heart. And yeah, I mean, I had a situation even with my daughter where she said, hey, that was for me. Like, I don't understand why this is for everybody now. And I don't write any of these things or share these with my family and think, oh, I'm going to put that in an episode. I think for me, like if you've been listening since episode 1, you kind of heard that this project for me started in really December, feeling like the Lord saying, hey, I want you to share some of this stuff I've been teaching you over the last few years. And so I kind of just opened up my journals to Levi and just said, hey, man, like, could we organize some of these things and put them together? And so a lot of these things have been shared over maybe the last few years in my journals, but as I'm going through the process, you'll notice maybe some of these episodes, it's like, man, these are super current. These are things that just happened. I mean, my son's birthday was on February 28th, 2019. So obviously I haven't been working on this journal entry for 2 years to him, but I think as I've learned some new things and tried to integrate some of these things in my life, a lot of new stuff's coming out of me, and I'm learning a lot more. And then as I organize these sections, I'm like, man, I really want to share that now because I think it fits. And this, man, this whole thing, I got to tell you, like, so much has come from this gift that I got Nolan. So much healing, I think, in our family has come from just this experience. And my son being kind of, I don't want to say sent out or released, but because at 16, I know a lot of people are like, oh, he's still 16. No, I mean, he's out of high school. And I feel like this, at his age and where he's going, this is like he's sending our son out and able to share him now with the world. And to say all that came from a Rolex, yeah, roly. I mean, man, I learned a lot. And so I really want you to read what I wrote, and I am not even going to summarize what I tried to write to Nolan. But, you know, if you've been watching and listening, it's like our family you might think is kind of strange. That's all right. I watched Captain Fantastic, which if you want to, man, that movie, a friend of mine just said, you got to watch that. You and Nolan got to watch that. And it's just a powerful movie. If Wes Anderson and so my family, like, I'm big on like bucket lists. I'm big on dreaming. I wrote it in the tagline of my bio on my website that says, like, I believe anything is possible, and I love instilling that belief in others. And so I want, you know, my kids to shoot for the stars. I want them to believe that they can do whatever it is that God's gifted them to do at any level. And so dreaming big, you know, I met my childhood hero, Michael Jordan, on the 18th hole in Nevada in the prime of his career in the summer when I was 14. I ran like hell to catch him, and I got him to sign my my program. I mean, that Jordan banner like this, with the wings is on my wall, and I mean, my Jordan's on my feet. I mean, this is everything, and it's like, dude, I met Michael Jordan. So I've gone after things even recently where I'm like, I'm going to go meet that person. And so obviously my kids, they're like, hey, yeah, I mean, they've met their favorite bands. They've met their favorite people that have had influence on their life. They've gone out and done things. And so my son has this bucket list that he's shared with me because my wife's bucket list actually was hidden. It was something that she wrote in her journal, and I've peeked around to kind of knock some things off that list. And so at Nolan's bucket list, it was really like everything on his list were things that I couldn't purchase. Their experiences. Once again, it's kind of been a big thing for our family, not just buying shit. But there was one thing on there that I could buy, and it was a Rolex. It was a vintage Rolex from 2001 that he had been eyeing on. It was an Air King. I don't know much about watches, but I do know it's a big connection point for a lot of fathers who hand down watches to their sons. And my dad has a watch that he bought at Mervyn's. It's like $35. But it's one that I kept that, and I kept his 49er jersey were the only two things I kept from my dad. So I don't wear that watch, but it travels with me wherever I go in my medicine bag. So Nolan I found like wearing, because he's like, it's super vintage. And so he's been wearing my dad's watch, but he's got this other taste for this Rolex, and I ended up buying it and surprising him with it. And I didn't know why I bought the Rolex. And I wrote him this letter, and you're going to read it. And I ended up writing a lot of things about money and about the things that my dad never taught me about money, but the things I watched. I often say kids are caught, not taught. And so I think everything I've learned about money and about business wasn't because my dad taught me those things, but he was never successful, although he tried like hell, like to provide. And I realized like my dad, his brother's a billionaire. He's on the Forbes list, and what that must be like to not have success, to file bankruptcy after owning a Sizzler, to run a vending machine company into the ground, to be fired from multiple jobs, and as kids really coming home, not understanding that. Like I remember my dad lost his job at Showbiz Pizza when Chuck E. Cheese bought him. And all I could care about was, could I go to skateboard camp still? And my dad said yes. And so my dad always provided, but I always knew it was such a struggle because he lacked a lot of knowledge around business and money, which I always just kind of vowed to, like, I'm going to figure that out. And so in this letter, I kind of shared to Nolan about, hey, this is an expensive gift. I didn't buy you a car, but I want to knock this off your list. And 16 is a big deal. And so I ended up talking to him a lot about just money and the things that I learned. And so I gave him the letter, and he his emotions and when he read the letter, like cried like I'd never seen him. And it was powerful. But some things when I say that I didn't write in the letter to him that have happened. A friend of mine saw the video of Nolan because he knew what I did, and he wanted to see his reaction. His friend Dave Tosti, who I'm going to talk about in another episode. And he said, let me work with your son. And Dave's the same guy who visited Nolan when he was, a week old. And we made his PAX 217, Dave's old band, onesie. It's one of the first outfits Nolan ever wore. And Nolan's whole life, he's wanted to be a rock star. It's actually on our fridge as a magnet that he made in kindergarten that says, "When I grow up, I want to be a rock star." And I've always told him, if Dave Tosti was your dad, you could. But when Dave Tosti saw that video, he said, "Hey, let me work with your son. I don't even care if he can sing. But any front man with that kind of emotion is just going to go far." And a kid like Nolan, with his head and his family and his if he could stay humble, man, no one's seen somebody like that. And it was just kind of wild to see, like, all right, I told Nolan that day, and I don't think Nolan ever thought he would really have a chance to do it. And since that, within a month, they're in the studio, and there's 4 songs done, and it's been a real treat to see, like, what happens when you just let something go, or you let somebody dream, or you let somebody just find out what they're really meant here to do. So that happened, and I figured out why I got him the Rolex in the first place. It has nothing to do with him. It had everything to do with a struggle my wife and I have been going through. And so for years, I've believed in her, I think, more than she's believed in herself. And that's been tough. It's been tough for her and me. Hey, Jeanette, you can do anything. I mean, our kids know that. Like, she just didn't believe it. And Nolan's top thing on his bucket list is to go to Japan. And it's just this random, he's fashion and this, and he's got all these things you want to see, and I've never had interest in going. And I got an opportunity in January to go speak in Japan anytime this next year. I would probably just say no, and it was like, oh, wait, that's on Nolan's bucket list. That would be epic. And it was one of those, like, I told Nolan, I was like, there's a marriage conference. It's it's a small event, but they want me and Mom to speak about sex and marriage, stuff that we know how to talk about. Mom's done really well. I mean, the sex, yeah, we've done really well, but she's done the talk really well. TMI. So it's like on a military base, and then they said they pay for our family, and it's just, this is crazy. Like, we can go to Japan, like, it's on, and I was so excited, and I was like, Nolan, you throw it out to Mom, because she knows it's on your bucket list, and she knows, like, you want to do this so bad, and she has to speak. And she said, like, she never wants to really do that ever again. But man, if she knows this, I think she'll do it. And she ended up saying no. And I never need to do that. And through, I think, that and my anger and my, just, I can't believe it. Like, how could you, like, this isn't that, we've done it. We have the talk. Like, this is, like, and I think for that, I realized, like, she said our son's life is a bucket list, which it's like, yeah, like, this kid's gotten to see the world already. Like, he can get to Japan. She's like, he can go take himself to Japan when he turns 18. And that was regardless. I was just like, what's stopping you from really just going, yeah, I could do that. I believe in myself. And I found my voice. And it was tough, man. It was probably for me, the biggest fight maybe in 15 years, 20 years. I don't know. We've been married. Like, it's huge. It just took almost everything out of me. And to the point of, like, I go through Nolan's bucket list and I was like, okay, I just love crossing stuff off. I love, like, doing that for other people, like, and just love people dreaming. And then you're like, this isn't by chance that, like, we got this opportunity. And so when I went down his bucket list, I was really like, I can't knock any of these things off right now for you, except the Rolex. So I think for me to spend, a couple $1,000s on a watch was so much easier to do than just the time and the energy and the work it would take for me and Jeanette to really get through that. And so it was like, it's quick. I'll just buy you the Rolex. And then when I wrote him that letter, I mean, I meant everything I said in that letter, but what I learned after writing that was actually that Friday night before his birthday. Jeanette and I went, and I wanted to have a dinner with her and go over some of this stuff. We end up at a dinner. It couldn't have gone worse. Somebody throws up across from us, and we're like, what the heck? Like barfs at the dinner table twice. So we're like, let's leave. And then mid-order, we left, and we end up at IHOP on a Friday night. There's just us in the restaurant. And I just said, Jeanette, I got to just tell you I bought this gift for Nolan, and in buying it, I think this is what I learned. And I basically said, I think you don't know that you have a voice, because I think you might never have had that growing up. Somebody might have taken that, And I think as you find your voice and you find your true self, you're going to be able to do whatever it is. Like, these aren't even, I'm not saying we want to speak as that couple speaker thing, but it's like you can walk into a room, you can go on a stage, you'll know those things. And what would that look like in starting that work in healing and forgiving some people in your past and your family? And I said, I think that's why I bought the Rolex, because I don't know how and what else to do other than here's some places and some things that I think you could explore. And I don't know, within a month, my wife's on a retreat in Napa Valley, place called Hoffman Institute, that opened my wife up to her true self and her spiritual self. And I want to say the rest is history. It truly is. It's that series of events, that openness that it did for me and Jeanette, that openness for Nolan, for a friend to see it and start saying, hey, let's go make music. Like, all of it started from the pain of not being able to knock off a bucket list item for my son for his 16th birthday. And it's changed our family's life. So when you hear about ice on the wrist or roly, 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 and that sounds fun in games, but man, this truly was like, probably one of the start of the biggest changes in our family's life, in my work life, in the things that I'm headed into now, and the things that I'm leaving behind, and the things that my wife and I are now plotting down the same path together. And it's freaking awesome. So with that, like I said, if you're not reading or following along, this is just an addition, maybe behind the scenes to the letter about the letter that came with this gift. And I would say the gift on his wrist isn't really the real gift that this has been to our family. And man, having a 16-year-old, whole nother story. So still don't feel old. Somebody the other day asked if he was my brother. I'm like, no, he's my son, who I am well pleased. Man, a joy to be his father. And can't wait for the world to see what a gift he is. So, man, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. And yeah, read it. CraigBrain.com has all the story. And that's all I got.
Thanks for thinking through Craig Brain. This podcast is only a small summarized part of a larger conversation. To read the full story, check out www.craigbrain.com and follow @CraigGross on whatever social suits your fancy.